Everybody, people are joining as Lev and I were just talking about how great Aaron is, and I was telling Lev, I said, Aaron and I, yeah, well, I mean, Aaron and Lev go back to the womb and before then, so y'all know that. But Aaron and I go back to college before Aaron was
Yeah.
right as he was going into law school is when I met Aaron and have seen Aaron's growth from Aaron made the decision. I stuck with a legal career for 12 years before
I couldn't believe it.
Aaron
Don't tell
recognized
me.
it was
I couldn't believe it.
about a year and a half there, huh?
I tell you, when he said, well, if he didn't even tell me, how about this? My wife told me. When my wife told me, I said, no, he did not. Actually, my other son told me. He couldn't even tell me that he's not a lawyer anymore, that he is doing this full time. I gotta be honest with you. It was at first, it was such a shock. But then at some point, I said to myself, you know what? When I was his age, when I was young, I mean, let him go, let him do it. And I couldn't be more prouder. I mean, what he's accomplished in a year with, right, Ben? I mean, it's like, and again, thanks to the community, the people and out there, and thanks to independent journalists like yourself that gave him platforms and helped them. And also because, it takes a lot of work. You're not by yourself. It takes a whole community to be able to achieve what he has done. But I couldn't be more prouder of him than, for everything that he's done.
I saw as the audience builds, we'll
Yeah.
let people in on what our private conversations look like too. So I
Yeah.
saw on Forbes that they had a list of what the top professions are amongst Gen Alpha about what they want to be, and the number one top profession is YouTuber. About the fifth or sixth was athlete. They drew a distinction between YouTuber and I think like fourth was like TikToker. And it was just such a fascinating thing, that, doctor was, in the
Yeah.
top 10, but not there. But it's just a fascinating thing that Gen Alpha, looks to YouTuber, as the top profession. And I would lump in with YouTuber, Substacker, and that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this whole world. But it shows you in terms of where things are going in the future. I never understood, Lev, as people are like moving their podcasts exclusively with platforms, even if it's like a Netflix or I'm like, why would you be leaving the biggest growth areas, whether it's
Incredible.
Substack or YouTube, and going to an area where Netflix is great, but who's watching their podcasts on Netflix?
No, that's. I was gonna say that. That's incredible. That's why I give you props. I give Aaron props, and all the other independent journalists that saw this new wave and took it, and is actually helping. Because if you think about it, this is the number one source of information now. And nobody's going to the real to. I don't know what you want to call them. The what is it? They're not real media anymore. I don't know what to.
Or I call them regime media. I call them
Regime media, or Netflix. You're right. I mean, it's the social media platforms that independent journalists and guys like yourself, leaders of that industry, that saw it quick enough. And going back to, I mean, I remember, what was it, 2018, 19, right, or something like that, around that, 1920, maybe around like that. That's going back like 6 years. And nobody could have thought that eventually we're going to have to have Joe Rogan interview, or you guys interview the president of the. Nobody thought that's where the world. I mean, it was like CNN, MSNBC, ABC. Now you take a look what happened with CBS yesterday. Not to, because I know we have a lot to go over in a short period of time.
people are like, why are you people like, Ben and Lev, get into the news. We're about to get there.
Yeah, you're getting some exclusive content, folks. So enjoy it. But yeah, but the CBS, did you see it? I mean, I saw it like briefly. I mean, the blow up they had with the guy on there saying, "No, what's going on here? They're not reporting the news, and it's trying to be pushed towards the far right movement." So yeah, I mean, this is what we have, and so thank God to independent journalism. Thank God to you guys, my son, others out there. One of the ones that actually I want to introduce you to, Ellie Leonard. People in this community know her well. Ellie Leonard is great. Just so you guys know, I know everybody reaches out. Can you introduce Ellie to Ben? I'm going to see Ben. I'm going to introduce Ellie to you.
Introducing me, and I know of the great work. I know of the great work that she's doing, and I look forward to
It's a,
connecting again
definitely
there.
big.
All right, Lev, let's jump right
Let's go.
in.
Let's go.
I see. I
Let's do
wanted
it.
to wait till we hit 1,000 viewers, and then we jump in. So we're at
Okay.
1,100 viewers. But let's talk about the kind of aftermath of the invasion of Venezuela. You can call it a invasion, war. You pick your name, but it's certainly not a law enforcement operation, which is what the Trump regime is claiming it is. It is interesting, the terminology law enforcement operation. Notice Putin doesn't call the invasion of Ukraine a war. He calls it a special
Special
operation,
operation.
law enforcement operation. So you need to understand that there is parallels there just in the language of 1984, war is peace, etc. Delcy Rodriguez is now the president. She was officially sworn in yesterday. What I found notable about the swearing in ceremony, though, is who was there and who was not there. I mean, I'm sure the CIA is there secretly behind,
100%.
behind some of that crowd. But what was notable to me is that Delcy gives a huge hug to the ambassadors of Russia, Iran, and China, who were front row, and they made it very clear that they were still front row. I see no corporate media talking about that. You then had Maria Corina Machado going on
That was
state
sad.
regime media Fox, and she said, "But I'll give you my Nobel Peace Prize, Donald. I'm sorry I didn't give it to you. Do you want
That's
my Nobel
crazy.
Peace? We were going to give it to him because all the reporting was one of the main reasons that Trump, and I think it was a subsidiary reason, but one of the reporting was that Trump was jealous that she got the prize and that she should have rejected it and turned it over to him. There's also reporting about Donald Trump particularly didn't like the dancing of Maduro, and that got to him because he thought Maduro was trying to copy his dance moves. And Trump just said stuff like that today during that bizarre Kennedy Center brief that I covered on the Midas Touch YouTube channel. Also, Donald Trump says he coordinated with the oil companies before and after. I saw somebody say Trump's the first to use oil as the cover up for the cover up of the cover up of the cover up, because it seems like he wanted to call the oil companies, but if he called the oil companies, the capital expenditures that would be needed to actually build out Venezuela's oil would be in the range of 75 to $100 billion. And right now, if you speak to oil executives, the issue actually isn't drill, baby, drill. They want to try to get the prices higher and decrease some of the supply. Also, the type of oil in Venezuela is described as like this kind of thick
Sludge.
and
Sludge.
so you need to then refine it. Likely, it would have to be refined in the U.S., but for an oil company, it's expensive as a process. And Lev, I'll toss it over to you now. If you don't know what's the same way with tariffs creates all this uncertainty. If you're a business and an oil company and you don't know who's really in charge, why would you do capital expenditures in an area that your billions of dollars of investments can immediately be undermined if you don't know who's running it? Is it Delcy? Is it going to be Machado? Is China involved? Is it the CIA? Is it Trump? Is it,
Yeah.
who's really running the show?
Well,
And so here we are right now. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of people not knowing what's really happening. Donald Trump giving deranged speeches. So, Lev, talk to us about what's the latest on your end.
Yeah, no, a lot to unwind there, Ben. I'm glad you brought it all together. But I mean, simple. I'm going to give you the simple fact, and I'll break it down. I mean, nothing changed, folks. Absolutely zero changed. The reason you saw Dulcie hugging the Russians, the Chinese, because I have a shirt that says everybody was in the loop. This was not. This was a coordinated theatrical plan because to get Maduro out, they gave Donald Trump what he wanted, his prize. As far as going into the oil companies, this started going back to 2019, Ben. This didn't just start today. And the oil companies we're talking about, I'm going to give you some names that the people might not know that they need to put on the radar. Alejandro Battencourt, who is in exile right now in Spain, wanted by the United States because he supported Maduro Maduro regime. He was partners with Harry Sargent. Harry Sargent's a big Republican donor, my ex-partner here in South Florida. Harold Hamm, another Republican big donor. These are some of the names that were already that talked about it. And also, when people talk about making money, Ben, again, you got to remember, it's not about America, but you're right, because for right now, yes, Venezuela has all these oil reserves, but it would take so much money to, first of all, invest into it to get it to a point to pump it out time wise, but also security wise, because you're dealing with it in a place that, I mean, there's just so many things. That's why there's a reason why till this day, big companies like Chevron, Exxon have not done all of that major whatsoever. But there's also billions and billions of dollars to be made on other source minerals like sludge and others, and different crude oil around the world, and the continuously support, a shadow diplomacy that's being run between Iran, Russia, China, to allow that to happen. And that is why you see that Delcy is has stayed in charge. And then I'm going to give you some inside scoop that a lot of people don't know, but if you read my book or you saw my documentary, Ben knows a little bit about it, but you guys might not know, is I was involved in a lot of these groups of people in the first Trump administration to try to get Maduro a soft landing, because we actually had a $2 billion a contract from PDVSA for $2 billion. I'm going to actually show it to you, Ben, from 2 billion barrels of oil here. This is from PDVSA, 2018 signed. This is the state-owned petroleum company from Venezuela to get Maduro a soft landing, which didn't happen. What I'm saying to you is right now what's happening, the same people are involved right now, already there prior to this, to be able to cut the deals. Secondly, the invasion, it's not invasion. When you said that, what I would call it is I would call it a lawless kidnapping. Basically they went in and they kidnapped some guy, that is a leader of a sovereign country that has nothing to do with us. But he kidnapped him because he needs to. And this is why it's important. And I want to bring it back to with everything that's going there, because again, it's coordinated. Nothing changed in Venezuela, folks. People that were celebrating, Venezuelans all over the world, clapping Maduro's gone, they're waking up today and saying, wait a second, Maduro is gone, but the regime has stayed. Nothing has changed. And not only did they not leave, but now you have Delcy in talks with Trump. Why do you have Delcy in talks with Trump? People don't know, but I'll tell you a little thing. So one of my ex-partners was very close with Delcy Rodriguez. And I remember even in the first administration, part of the pitch to Donald Trump was because Trump, because of Bolton and Pompeo, he was going back and forth. And those that saw my interview yesterday with Miles Taylor, he was actually in the White House when this was going on. When we were going back and forth to invade with Guaido or not to invade with Guaido, there was a lot of backdoor dealings at the time going on. I'm sorry, I lost my thought for a second. What were we just saying, Ben?
You were saying that there were a lot of backdoor dealings. You were
Oh, yeah,
talking
but
about Pompeo. You were talking about how when you were there speaking with Pompeo and everybody else, that that Delcy's back in charge, and
Oh,
you're going
Delcy,
over
yeah,
Delcy.
Delcy was the important part. I'm sorry, because there's so much going on and I got so much of it. So Delcy, I'll never forget that my partner at the time told me, and Rudy, it was me, Rudy, Pete Sessions sitting there right after we got off the phone call with Maduro before Rudy went to the White House. And and he goes like, listen, he goes, Delcy is more of a friend to us than Maduro. And because there was talks about Eric Prince invading, taking Maduro out at the time before even the invade. So the conversation was basically that Delcy is a friend to us. So I'm not surprised that Delcy stayed in there. I'm not surprised that they didn't take out any of the defense ministers. I'm actually going to be reporting on and breaking some news of how some of the people involved right now are actually already in there profiting. And these are the people that are dealing with Russia, with China. Nothing changed. All of the rhetoric we're hearing from Russia saying that this is, this, and China saying this is this, it's all part of a bigger ploy, which we've been speaking about, Ben, because watch the space of Taiwan, and nobody's talking about, but Russia's continuously pounding Ukraine, which has not stopped, and Trump allowed that. It's a division of power that's happening. But Delcy was in the conversation. It was an internal coup arranged with the Russians and everybody else to give Maduro up and leave everything status quo. because that's all that happened, folks. And the reason it happened, and the one thing I want us to also talk about later today, Ben, before we end, which is important, is the Epstein Files. Because what I'm hearing from internally that they're having a lot of, they can't control the leaks of the Epstein Files, and there's other things that are happening. And I wanted to ask you and your Midas Mighty if they could help me out. So there's a gentleman by the name of Dan Bongino, Ben. We know him very well. Dan Bongino is no longer now the FBI second in command. He has come out with a post. He is now back to podcasting, folks. He's back on social media. So I want everybody out there, and I want to put him. I have very good sources that Dan Bongino has a lot of information about the Epstein files that he refuses to talk about, refuses to discuss. Let's put some pressure on him. Since the media won't, they won't ask him the questions, they won't ask him anything. Let's put some pressure on him about why Dan Bongino, what he saw, where he saw. He made his career on this. He made his life. Let's do it. Let the Midas Mighty with the Lev members, all of us together. Let's show Dan Bongino some welcoming back and let him answer some questions.
So I think that there is a symmetry with China, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, Trump, Venezuela. Each have their own resources, whether it's Taiwan and semiconductors and a lot of other industries there, whether it's Ukraine and its rare earths and other resources that it has, and whether it's Venezuela and its oil. When you look at things through the sphere of influence prism that Trump does and Putin does and Xi Jinping does, really the issue is we dominate our sphere and then we kind of trade in a very transactional way, in a colonial way, in an imperialistic way, look at countries and say, all right, we control, this is our hemisphere. I mean, that's what Trump said. The State Department said, this is ours. This is our hemisphere, which is just a patently unlawful, ridiculous declaration. And Trump posts the Don Roe doctrine photos with the club of him stepping over the entire hemisphere. And, that's why, we will let you, China, Iran, Russia, be in Venezuela as a tenant, as a
Thank you.
renter, but we own it. Similarly, you will let us into Ukraine as a tenant and a renter, but you, Russia, can own it.
Nord
And the
Stream 2.
same perspective of Taiwan is renters versus ownership, back to Donald Trump's mind as a real estate guy. And the factor that these three, Xi Jinping, Trump, and Putin, don't factor in, well, how do you think Europe's going to react to this? Like, what about Africa? Like, where does the entire continent go in your plan? You think Canada's just going to be okay with this, and Mexico is just going to, be okay with this, and the rest of Central America and South America? Where's Australia going to be in this? How are other nations going to react to this? And and ultimately, to me, Xi Jinping is more of a linear, brilliant thinker, and I say this in a bad way, just a smart guy in a bad way as
Yeah.
a smart guy, but he thinks through things generationally and not what's my press release for tomorrow in terms of his chess moves in building. You know, I think that Putin and Trump are very similar pathologically in creating alternate realities and framing everything. And amongst these three people, there that's not a stable world order generally being created with their frameworks of things. And so within that, what's Europe's reaction? What's the rest of the world's reaction? And that's how we're seeing it. And I go back to, a statement that actually Congressmember Swalwell made, and he said it perfectly, where he goes, Trump couldn't run his own casinos. Like, you think that he's going to be able to run a global world order that has redefined a post-World II stable world order if he couldn't run a casino in Atlantic City, or if he can't get out the Trump telephones on time, or if his social media platform was failing, then they had to do a deal with what was their latest deal with a company on what was the energy fusion energy
Oh,
that
fusion.
hasn't been released yet, that so to me that's I like to think about things as what's the framework we're operating in versus the day-to-day headlines, because the framework, it's kind of reporting as a meteorologist on the weather. You can see the clouds, you see what's developing. It doesn't always mean it's going to be a rainy day when you think it's going to be a rainy day. Sometimes you go to Disneyland like I did, and you didn't think it was going to rain and it poured, and then maybe you got. But the broader point is you need to look at these shifts. And I think that's one of the things that we focus, almost meteorologists of a global order, and how that's impacting our day-to-day life. Lev, before you go, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, no, first of all, I just wanted to say for everybody out there, very important. I know a lot of people are talking about how do we stop it? I mean, what's going on? How do we try to figure all of this out? We have a solution. And the one solution that this whole country is united on, the one solution that this whole world is united on, the one solution that Mega is even united on is called the Epstein Files. Today is already January 6th, folks. January 5th was supposed to be a big day. That right after the New Year, Congress supposed to come in action. We're supposed to be seeing subpoenas flying. We're supposed to be seeing impeachment documents being written up that are basically a bipartisan thing. Everybody's on it. But unfortunately, we're not, because Donald Trump did this on purpose. Yes, it's important what's happening with Venezuela. Yes, it's important on this world dominance, but we can't stop it unless we get control back of the House, unless we get some kind of control back. The only way we could get control back is we have one thing that we're all united on, is the Epstein Files. They are currently right now in I don't know what's the right terminology, Ben, but the DOJ and Pam Bondi, they're in contempt, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
but they're breaking the law. Let's make sure that we keep our focus on it, folks, because that's the way. Right now, we have the tool where everybody's united. Marjorie Taylor Greene is out there today. Congress is in session. Make your phone calls, send your emails. Make sure you let them know that, yes, great about what happened in Venezuela, but release the Epstein Files. We want to know where the predators are. We want to know the names. Stop the redactions, and let's have some accountability, because I promise you that will put Donald Trump right back on his ass quicker than you could imagine. And he won't be talking about invading Greenland. He'll be trying to figure out how to say this is another hoax and trying to figure it out. Remember that.
We did a video on our YouTube channel this morning where I basically extrapolated based on what's been produced already and what hasn't been produced, that the real number is 20 million pages are actually missing. And the reason that we know 20 million pages are missing is in their filing before Judge Engelmeyer, they say they produced 12,353 documents, which equals 125,000 pages. So you just do a basic ratio. So it's 10.22 pages per document that's been released thus far. And they've admitted that they're missing, that 2 million haven't been reviewed. So just take 2 million, multiply it by 10.22. And it's like, it's very basic stuff that there's 20 million missing pages at least right now. So we'll keep everybody apprised on that. Subscribe to the Substack here. Subscribe to Lev's Substack as well. Let's keep growing this community together. Make sure you subscribe, share the word about this Substack, about Lev's Substack, and just 2026 Midas Touch community continues to grow each and every day. All independent news that supports democracy, we need to support and uplift and unite. And we're grateful for everybody tuning in and watching this today. And so great to see you, Lev. Great to see the community coming out in full force and ready for 2026. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben. Keep fighting the good fight, my brother.
All right. See you later, everybody. Have a good one.
Take care.